Mr. Allen, September 29, 2021, you sent an email questioning Director Wray's testimony in front of Congress. You said in that email, there is good possibility the D.C. elements of our organization are not being forthright about the events of January 6th. You remember that email?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't send that to anyone. You sent that to the people you're supposed to send it to, members of the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, the very next day I find to be interesting, on September 30th, 2021, the next day, just so happened your 5-year reauthorization for your security clearance came due, and they said, no problem. Mr. Allen should keep his security clearance. After all, he's had it for 20 years, right? Yep. That happened the next day.
Correct, sir.
Decorated Marine veteran, employee of the year at the Charlotte Field office, had a security clearance for 20 years. They reauthorized your security clearance. Something else happened that next day. Your email got forwarded to the security division and to Mr. Veltri. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then 19 days later, Mr. Veltri opened an investigation into your security clearance status. I get all those facts right, Mr. Levitt? Is that what happened with Marcus in those 2 days? And then 19 days later?
Yes, except for from what we can tell, Veltri directed that day that it be opened. It's just that the underlings under him didn't carry that out until 19 days later.
Yeah. And he directed, they look into a guy, decorated Marine veteran, held a security clearance for 20 years. They look into him because Mr. Allen said there's a chance the FBI leadership hasn't been square with us, right?
That's correct.
And he cited a New York Times article. They thought the same thing. And oh, by the way, there's the history that we all know about. FBI spied on the president's campaign, lied to the FISA court, investigated parents at school board meetings, said if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist. So we got all that history, and he gets investigated for that because he simply questioned the leadership, went through the appropriate channels. Mr. Horowitz, did Mr. Veltri and the people at the Security Division follow the standard process?
They did not.
They did not. In fact, isn't it true that, Mr. Levitt, isn't it true that some of the people, I think you cited 4 of them in your statement, 4 people, the initial investigator, the second investigator, the first adjudicator, and another adjudicator, all got reassigned. They all agreed that Mr. Allen should keep his security clearance. This investigation shouldn't have happened, and they get reassigned or something happens to them.
4 of them all did not recommend that his clearance be, that there be a negative action on it. 2 of them were reassigned.
2 were reassigned. Some of them are whistleblowers now, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Man, if that's not political, I don't know what is. Oh, and they didn't stop there. They piled on. They also said, if Mr. Allen, he questioned whether he should get the vaccine or not. They came after him for that. Is that right, Mr. Levitt?
Yes.
And then they went after his faith. Direct attack on the First Amendment. Because he's a Christian, because he's a Catholic, because he takes his faith seriously, oh my goodness, we got to take his security clearance away from him, even though he served our country, decorated Marine, and held a security clearance for 20 years. That sure looks political to me, Inspector General Horowitz. Does it look political to you?
Well, Congressman, as I said earlier, we've seen issues with the FBI and how it's treated whistleblowers, frankly, across the spectrum. And I agree with you, it's very concerning that would be done here.
We know they're political because while all this is going on, they used the questionnaire. Isn't that right, Mr. Levitt? Isn't that right? They used this questionnaire to people they wanted to snitch on folks like Marcus Allen. They gave him a questionnaire.
Those were used in the case of a handful of employees, and I know that Mr. Horowitz's office is looking at that. I think it's important to note that the questionnaire wasn't the only thing, right? That these questions were asked across
I'm talking about the way they piled on to go after
Yeah.
Mr. Allen and keep his security clearance and keep his pay from him for 27 months. And they did the same thing to Garrett O'Boyle. And what that has meant, as you indicated in your testimony, what that has meant to his family and Mr. O'Boyle's family. And this questionnaire said, did anyone ever vocalize support for President Trump? All right, you're allowed to say things about the President of the United States when you work in the FBI, aren't you, Mr. Horowitz?
I'm sorry.
You're allowed to say you support a president. You're allowed to say that in the FBI.
Absolutely, those questions are highly inappropriate.
And you're allowed to decide what kind of health decisions you're going to make with your own body, right?
Correct.
Those shouldn't be grounds for saying you're somehow disloyal to the country, but that's what they did. Highly inappropriate questions being asked of witnesses during security clearance investigations. That's your testimony, right, Mr. Horowitz?
That's correct.
And he got reinstated just recently. Marcus Allen you got reinstated, right, Marcus?
Yes, sir.
Why haven't they given you your money?
I am not aware why it's taking them 4 months to cut a check for all the back pay. I have no idea why it's taking that long.
They put you through pure hell for 27 months, falsely accused you. They go through the process. 4 people get reassigned because they agree with you, but the politics of Mr. Beltry, who, oh, by the way, as Mr. Levitt pointed out, is now running the second assassination investigation on President Trump in Miami. I find that just astonishing. And they won't pay you.
Right, we're still waiting for the payout.
When was the final agreement? When was the final settlement with the FBI? What was the date, Mr. Levitt?
June 1st.
Well, they've had time. Doesn't take that long to write a check, for goodness sake. So he's still in waiting. That's how our FBI treats a good man who has served our country for 20-plus years. It's ridiculous. And yet the Democrats say there's no weaponization. You got to be kidding me.